9 o'clock. So let us begin. We don't do music for this one, right?
Do not. Do not.
Okay, so we're going to start. And as Harold mentioned to everybody in writing, and I'll repeat today, this is our last 9 a.m. class for the summer. Because we're starting Hebrew and there's a lot going on, I don't want to over Zoom people. So we'll continue with the 10 o'clock class, but this is the last Monday morning, 9 o'clock. And I hope you all enjoy whatever the sessions are for Hebrew starting today. If there are any problems signing up, and I know there have been lots of problems, Harold will put in the chat maybe Jesse's email address.
Yep.
Just write to Jesse if you've had any problems, and he'll manage getting you in and answer all your questions. So Jesse Katz at CBST is managing all of the signups. So we apologize. We tried to do something clever, and we don't have a very clever system. And so it made the system crash. Or as I say, what good is it having a smartphone if the owner is dumb, right? You've got to, those things have to match. So my smartphone has a dumb owner, and it doesn't work so well sometimes. Okay, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So let's start by just asking if there's anything on people's minds that you would like me to respond to from last week or anything, or else I'll go into stuff I've prepared. But again, the idea of this gathering is anything that you don't understand or you felt was a little over your head or you're confused by, this is the place to absolutely ask it. And by the way, I want you to do that in the 10 o'clock also, but let's practice here. If there's anything that's come up about Psalms, Hebrew, the history of it all, the structure, anything. So if anybody has anything, let's please step forward to our very warm and welcoming and friendly group. You could raise your hand in the chat.
No hands yet.
No hands yet.
Maybe since it's 9 o'clock in the morning, we can let you get us warmed up, Rabbi.
Okay.
Wait. Gail has a hand. But Gail, I'm going to
Gail, you have to learn how to raise your hand properly. Let's practice that.
I see you, and I'm going to recognize you, but in the future, please just
No. Let's practice it now, Harold. This is part of this class, is learning how to really, okay?
Let's see.
Let's practice now. Everybody should practice this with this so people really.
Gail, I don't see your hand yet. It's on the bottom. If you go to participants and on the bottom, raise hand. Wait. While we're doing that, Larry Finkelstein has raised his hand. Larry Finkelstein.
We have several. Does everybody see how to raise your hand and how to unraise your hand in the? That's how we do it in this class,
right.
not the visual. Okay.
Okay. So yes. So Larry, why don't you go first? Unmute yourself, Larry. We still can't hear you, Larry. You need to unmute yourself.
I was actually just practicing raising my hand.
Okay, good.
I have nothing to say.
All right, well, you get a star.
You get a star. We want everybody to be proficient with this Zoom technology.
Rabbi, I see that Gail Winter has raised her hand.
Yes, she has.
Let's call on.
Yeah. Hi. So over the weekend, I'm having trouble getting a full screen on this, but that's okay. Over the weekend, I started reading The New Yorker.
Ah.
Did you see that article on David?
I read it this weekend as well.
And I was so confused and so overwhelmed. I thought, I don't get this at all.
Okay.
So I'm just sharing it. It was so dense.
Yes, it's a dense article and it requires a lot of knowledge. I was surprised the New Yorker did that actually, but I guess they like these kind of specialized dense articles. We're talking about an article, I think Harold shared it or somebody shared it.
I did. I posted it on the Facebook page for the Psalms class.
Which is how I first heard about it because I am way behind on New Yorkers. So as a result of that, I did read it this weekend actually. And and everybody should try to read it. And you know, if you get 20% out of it, that's great.
That's okay, yeah.
That's okay. But it's an article that discusses the history of archaeology debating whether or not David was a real character. That's the fundamental question. And it refers, by the way, to a couple of the archaeological, remember I did a thing about the Mesha stela and the Tel Dan stela, those two archaeological finds. Stela, it means stone. And it was those two inscriptions in which Beit David, the ancient Hebrew, or what we call the Ketiv Ashuri, the Assyrian script, had Beit David. Does everybody remember that when I referred to those two archaeological finds, which were very exciting and actually within the last, 30 years. So very exciting. So that article refers to those two archaeological finds and about which added to the question of whether David was a real character.
Yeah.
And the article also discusses whether or not, who was the real David, if there was a real David. Was he kind of a low-level tribal leader who was, there were lots of different small tribal groups or gatherings in the ancient Near East. And now we're talking about the 900s BCE. This is extremely ancient in the world of Western civilization. It's not as ancient for other parts of the world, but for anything that we think of as Western, 900 BCE, pretty old. So, of course, there was advanced civilizations in China and in Africa, but this was pretty old. And Rome was, of course, the Roman Empire was hopping along, but this is very old. So we imagine that the article talks about one image of David is that he was kind of a thug, a little bit of a small town, a small tribal leader. Actually, that article, Harold, made me think maybe we should even look at a map one day of this area, and understand it a little bit.
Yeah.
So David was from Hebron or Hebron in English originally, and that was where he was the leader in Hebron and Hebron, and then he went up to Jerusalem, which is a short journey north, and that's when he established the city of what we now know the city of David. The second part of the article talks about the archaeological political explosion around the issue of the city of David, which is now an extremely well-financed. And for those of you who were on the trips to Israel in 2018, we did it both on the kids trip, but more thoroughly on the adult. Oh, look at this guy. Is Harold the best TA in the world?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. All right, so if you can find Hebron, see Jerusalem. Jerusalem
You guys have
is a star.
another one. Hold on. I'm going to put up it. Okay. Whoa. Okay.
So if you find Jerusalem, which is a good point to...
Here's Jerusalem.
There's Jerusalem. Right below Jerusalem is Bethlehem. And in fact, when we were at Ramat Rachel, for those of you who were on the kids trip to Israel, when we stood there was an outlook area of Ramat Rachel, which is at the southern tip of Jerusalem. You could literally see Bethlehem. From Ramat Rachel, you could see Bethlehem. That's how close they are. And then the next ancient city below Bethlehem is Hebron or Hebron, which has a different name in Arabic. But this is the city. So you can see the connection. So David, let's see if it has Gat. Actually, G-A-T on this, which would be, there's Gat. Look in the Philistia. See G-A-T in the yellow part toward the Mediterranean. Okay. So that's the city of Gat that our Psalm 8 refers to. Oh, Harold, maybe we should look at this at 10 o'clock. This is fantastic. So that's the city of Gat, which you see is a city in what was the Philistines, where the Philistines lived, which was where in that area is where King David fought the giant Goliath, is around the city of Gat. And there are people that think that our Psalm 8, which refers to Gittit, is related to the city of Gat. Remember, nobody knows. This is one theory. And the city of Gat gets its name because it had wine presses. There were a lot of wine presses in that area. That's a valley, and it's a very low area, and lots of wine presses. And in fact, if you were on the kids trip in 2018, we went to a region near there for that archaeological dig. Is very close to that area where we did that archaeological dig. And that's where, we remember we saw those things that they said were maybe wine presses. That area is very, very full of that. But that's where the city of Gat is, where David as a young man, according to history, fought the giant of Goliath, who was a Philistine. And Philistine, not in the English sense, meaning a primitive or uneducated, uncivilized. Philistia was actually a name of a region. And by the way, this is interesting to note. The reason we think we got the alphabet, the Greek alphabet, is that This was an area of tremendous
Trade.
trade.
The trade
And
route.
obviously Greece is not far away if you're going by boat. And the Philistines were tremendous traders, and they would go back and forth, and Phoenicians, etc. Anyway, so there's Hebron. So David, this is the region of King David in the biblical stories. He was then in Hebron, and he was a tribal chief, and the article talks about that. And then he went up to Jerusalem, and on the southern slope coming into the Mount Moriah, the biggest mountain of Jerusalem. Jerusalem has 7 hills, we're told in the Bible, and they are there. Although with the current construction that the former mayor of Jerusalem named Olmert, who is now in jail because he was such a corrupt, evil person. Sometimes that works out, that the corrupt, evil politicians end up in jail. Olmert basically turned Jerusalem over to the developers. And so now there's massive, massive buildings which really hide the beauty of some of those 7 hills. But the southernmost hill, which you could see, so from Hebron coming up, David established the city of David. And so the article talks about the archaeology to find the city of David has been largely funded by a right-wing political group. That right-wing political group, oh, you are amazing. Look at this TA,
Wait, hold on.
amazing, Harold. This is fantastic. This picture up here. So if you,
I'm trying to get it bigger. No.
so that teardrop,
Yes.
it's okay. This is good. This is perfect. So the teardrop shape, I can't do the thing, but
I
going
can.
down.
Yep.
So that teardrop shape, that's called City of David. And then up on top is Mount Moriah, where David's son, Solomon, built the temple. But in David's time, there was no temple up there. The city emerged down here. And by the way, for those of you who know that we talked about the biblical story of David and Bathsheba, in the Bible, it says that David was overlooking the rooftops. And if he was in the top part of that teardrop, looking down over the rest of the city, you could see how he would see a naked woman who was sunning herself. And that's how he saw Bathsheba and fell in love with her, sent her husband to war to die, and had an affair with Bathsheba. So you could see how that would happen if you start to look at the structure. Anyway, what you're looking at here, see how it says City of David? Why did David choose this to make the city? Well, because of course, what you need for defense is to be high up in any time, right? And there was a source of water. So we, on the kids trip, did the walk through the, I'm not sure it's on here.
The spring? No. The spring.
No, it's not shown in this map. We'll see it on another one. There's a spring that goes underneath those walls and brings water into the city. So if you have water and you have defense, that's how you could, what would be important for an ancient city. So this was the city of David. So what the article talks about is uncovering this archaeology is extremely politically sensitive, because guess what? There is an Arab Muslim village there. So guess what? The Arabs are not so excited about uncovering, destroying their homes in order to uncover an ancient city. And there's been tremendous political conflict about it. And there's I don't have the article in front of me, but there's even one of the archaeologists says, listen, we don't like the politics of the archaeologists who have uncovered the city of David, but because they have so much money and the academics don't have it, they've actually done a very good job of uncovering it. The political issues are a nightmare, and they continue to be. And I think the adult trip, we walked around and talked about some of those political issues now, but it's pristine now, and they've uncovered amazing, amazing archaeological things that are really, really exciting and thrilling to see, but layered with this very complicated political reality of the contemporary Jerusalem. So so that's what the article was talking about, was nobody really knows if David was real or not. Here are some of the examples we've learned in archaeology to prove he was, but those examples, not so clear. I mean, not definitive. And then this city of David, which is now being uncovered in Jerusalem. And anybody who's been with me on a trip, I'm always ambivalent, but we go because the archaeology is so amazing but we try to talk about some of the political. Archaeology in Israel is a political time bomb, not time bomb, a bomb. It's a political quagmire. It's a very complicated political mess. The Arab community thinks that, not incorrectly, that for some of the Israelis, the archaeology is about proving Jews' long-term connection to the land in order to throw the Arabs off. And some of the the reason the right-wing money goes into archaeology is because of that. So there is some truth to it. On the other hand, there are a lot of people who just want the archaeology and wish there could be cooperation between the Arabs and Jews who love archaeology in order to find ancient things, not because there's a political agenda. But in the contemporary environment, everything has a political agenda. And so that's what that article, it's really fascinating and fantastic that the New Yorker published it, but it is not easy to read. But that, I just gave you a synopsis of it. You might now go back to it and read it.
I think that one of the things was, one of the archaeologists said that all of the archaeological evidence for this important period could actually be put, all of the epigraphic evidence could be put in a shoebox.
That's why
there'd be room left over for something.
Yeah, that's why I say when we talk about the first temple period or the United Kingdom, which Harold just showed us a map of the United Kingdom, we have very, very, very little evidence of it. We have, and oops, the dogs are coming in and out now. We have, the evidence that we have is really biblical. And so that's why archaeologists always say, what's the extra biblical evidence of any of this? Meaning, what do we have that's outside of the Bible? Because that's self-referential. Those are documents that are saying this happened, but it's not enough proof to say that we have a document. We need what can corroborate it in any way.
And
it's a document of faith. Ultimately, it's a document of faith.
But the bottom line is that the settlers who say, well, my people have been here for over 1,000 years and we have evidence, that if you could come up with archaeological evidence for Jewish or pre-Jewish residents in this land, it has a political resonance, correct?
Right, but for sure, Jews have lived there. I mean, the one thing that the settlers are correct, that Jews have been there continuously since the destruction of the temple in 70 of the Common Era. And sometimes they want to say that's not true. For sure, we know that's true.
Ellen Poster has her hand up, and she asked an interesting question. Is Bath Sheva the same as Bath Chava, or is it Bat or not?
Excellent question. Bat means daughter of, and so there are a lot of names that have Bat in it because it means daughter of. But Bat Sheva, or Bathsheba, or how is it pronounced in English? Bathsheba or something like that?
Bathsheba.
Bathsheba, sometimes Bathsheba. Daughter, Sheva means seven. I don't really know why she's named that, but that's the name of the biblical character.
And either Doug or Susan has their hand up.
So if what you're saying, the question I have is, where did the name of the city of David come from, since we really don't know that David existed or that he had a city?
Well, because biblically we consider it the city of David, and for sure the archaeology indicates it's as ancient as that. And this archaeology, one of the reasons it's controversial, as this article says, this archaeology does seem to reflect the story in the Bible, that there is this city of David found on the southern part of the wall with the whole story of the spring is from the Bible. That's one of the reasons it's so controversial. But no, there's no signpost that says, welcome to the city of David. But it does match what the stories in the Bible indicate.
Do the current citizens call it the city of David, or do they not?
The Israelis do. The Israelis.
What do the others call it?
Silwan. It's an Arab village. It's part of an Arab village called Silwan, which is one of the most violent and produces the most number of terror attacks. And it's the one place in East Jerusalem I would not go walking in by myself. I'm comfortable going into the old city. I'm comfortable going into East Jerusalem. I would never go into Silwan, and I would never let a CBST trip go there unguided by Palestinians. And that's not true everywhere. It's a very so City of David is part of this village called of Silwan. You'll often hear, I mean, if there's, and I mean, the violence has been suppressed because of tremendous security operations, but you'll often hear that Silwan is the source of a lot of different tension.
Judy Hollander has been posting a little about this political issue. Judy is with our Middle East and Me team. Judy, do you want to?
I've been, yes, anyway, I just wanted to say,
Judy has been on every single trip I've done to Israel, except for the one with kids.
yeah.
Right, Judy?
And I've been with other people too. And
Yes.
2008, I went with, I guess with Trua, when they took non-rabbis. But at that trip in 2008, Seidenberg, Danny, the lawyer who founded
Seidenberg. Yeah.
took us to Silwan.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you see these things, you're never the same anymore. It's like probably, you know, you go and look at the people at the border and you never could be the same again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not that people can't go there. I just would never walk around there alone.
No. This was a tour. And this was also 2008. And we're talking, what, 14 more years.
Yeah.
All right, any more questions? No questions in chat. No one has their hand up. So Rabbi, we'll turn it back to you for the list of things you wanted to share with us.
Yes. So first of all, I just want to review for everybody that people remember that Psalms, the word Psalms is from the Greek, which means something that has to do with music. And that's very important because of the Hebrew word mizmor, which means a song or something set to music. But Sefer Tehillim, which is the book of what we translate as Psalms, Tehillim means praise. It has nothing to do with music in the title. And that's very important to know. And going back, and I'll repeat this again because it's so important, that there are 24 books in the Jewish Bible. The Psalms is one of those books. Those 24 books are divided into 3 sections. Torah, the 5 books, which is the 5 books of Moses. Nevi'im, prophets, which are the prophets and the historical books. Joshua, and then Kings and Chronicles and Samuel. And then the final chapter is Ketuv. The final subsection is Ketuvim. And Ketuvim are the writings. And the first book of the section of Ketuvim is Psalms in the Jewish Bible. Remember, the Jewish Bible is different than the Christian Old Testament. And the Christian Old Testament has multiple versions depending on whether you're Eastern Orthodox, Protestant, Western Roman Catholic, or some of the other Christian traditions. So there's not really one Christian Old Testament either. And that's very important to know, that the books are ordered in a different way for Christians. And to some degree, there are a few books that are different. So I'm repeating this just because this is really basics to studying the Bible. And I really want to make sure everybody understands that and is clear about it. Oh, there you go. There we have the, this is the division of the Ketuvim, of the writing section. This is the last, but this is not.
Not it? Tehillim, Mishlei, Job, the Megillot, and the other book?
Yeah. Yep, and Divrei Yamim. Yep, Chronicles. So, so that is there any question about that? Because that's one thing I really want you to come away with before we zoom into Psalms themselves.
Allison has her hand up.
Allison.
My question is if you could repeat again the difference between the Jewish Bible and the Old Testament.
So that's why I object to the Old Testament, not because I don't get so worried about the new and old, although I agree that old for Christians mean it's been superseded by a New Testament. That I get. That's a philosophical discussion, which I think is interesting and I enjoy having. But when you say the Old Testament, you are talking about the Christian Bible. And the Christian Old Testament is a different book than the Jewish Bible. It has many similarities. It has many of the same books, but not all. The books are ordered in a different order for religious reasons. The Christian Old Testament ends in a way that logically moves into the declaration of Jesus. And so it's a different book, although it has many of the same elements. So that's why I object to Old Testament also, just because it's confusing to people. I mean, if you really know what what I want this class to come out understanding, the Old Testament is not the same thing as the Jewish Bible. Just actually concretely, specifically, it has the books are ordered differently. And in some cases, there are different books and one famous example, of course, though there are others, is that the book of Maccabees is in the Christian Old Testament, but it is not in the Jewish Bible. And there are other books as well. And the books are ordered differently. In the Jewish Bible, our 12 small prophets are collected into one book, and we call it the Trei Asar, the 12. And in the Christian Bible, they're all separate books. It sounds minor, but it's a way of saying, let's not just I believe the Christian Bible deserves deep respect, and I don't do this to disrespect. The opposite. I love studying the New Testament and the Old Testament. I love the study of Christian holy books. I just think we have to understand they're different. It's not just different names. And which is why it's very important. If you refer to the Jewish Bible, call it the Hebrew Bible or the Jewish Bible or Tanakh. And when you want to talk about the Christian Bible, I don't object personally to calling it the Old Testament, although, you know, depending the context I'm in, you know how it is, depending who you're around, you want to fight different battles. So sometimes I say something, but often I don't. When I'm in a seminar, when I was younger and I took seminars and I studied things like this in great detail, I took whole classes in Old Testament. I loved studying it from a Christian perspective. It's not the same thing as the Jewish Bible. Do you get that, Allison? Or is that not clear? Should I say it again? I just want to make sure people understand it, because it's really interesting to study the Bible.
I understood that they weren't the same, and the Old Testament is the Christian's version of the Jewish Bible. But I was just wondering, like you were saying, there are the similarities and then the differences. The overlapping is also confusing, but I understand that the Hebrew Bible is an entirely different.
Right. It doesn't, and that's what we looked at one day. Harold did a wonderful, where you could see what the Christian Old Testament.
I'm going to find one good chart and share it with everyone.
Yeah.
I'm not finding a simple one that works.
Right. And the Roman Catholic is different than the Protestant Bible. And Roman Catholic is different than Eastern Orthodox, although they're close in other ways. So all those things are important to respect. And it just if you say Old Testament, you don't mean just the Christian version of the Jewish Bible. It's their own text. It's their own holy text that has important differences that I respect. So I just want people to understand that. Okay? Anything else about that? I'm happy to go over it a million times. I love this.
Sue has her hand up. Unmute yourself, Sue. We can't hear you.
Okay, yeah, just about this topic. I guess I had been confused, but I was wrong. Just tell me, I had this incorrectly. I thought that when anybody referred to the Old Testament or New Testament, I mean the Old Testament, I thought it was just referring to the 5 books of the Chumash, the 5 books, but it's not. It refers to the whole
thing.
Got it. Okay.
And for some Christians, it's 37 books. Remember, Jews, it's 24 books.
Yeah.
For some Christian versions, it's 37 books. For some Christian versions, it's 49 books. And again, it's a little bit that they count some of them differently. And in some cases, they add things. But it's not just the 5 books of Moses.
Okay.
That is the same, by the way, going back to Allison's point. The 5 books of Moses exist in the Christian Bible as well as in the Jewish Bible, and there's no difference. That's not where the differences lie.
Okay.
The differences lie in the second 2 sections. The orders of the second 2 sections are different. And in the New Testament, they don't order it in the same way in those 3 big subgroups.
Okay.
But that's a very good question.
Thank you. I just got it.
And of course, the 5 books of Moses are in some ways the most famous parts, so that's.
Yeah, that's why, I don't know.
Stories, but for Christians, many of the prophets are really, really important, in particular Isaiah and some of the Psalms, as we've seen, because the translations that they use via the Greek, they see very much as the Old Testament foreshadowing Jesus and the New Testament. That's less true, by the way, in the 5 books of Moses. There isn't a lot of that in the 5 books of Moses. There's a little bit, but most of those foreshadowings that Christians point to that the Old Testament has of Jesus are in Isaiah. Isaiah has a lot of, Isaiah has a lot of prophecies where we talked about what's the word for young woman. That can get translated as virgin, but for Jews, it means a young woman. It doesn't mean a virgin. So that's a big difference, right? If you're, and what the Son of Man means, as we looked at, I think it was Psalm 2, that Christians really understand Son of Man to mean Jesus. And for Jews, it was a pretty standard way to refer to people. So Isaiah has a lot of that, and some of the other historical books too, where you'll read. It's very important for Christians to read from the lectionary of the Old Testament. And if you go to a church in which reading scripture is significant, they will usually have a reading from the Old Testament and a reading from the New Testament. But what they say, and if you go to churches, which I love going, and by the way, this Zoom thing has made it so much easier. I just love it. On Sunday mornings, I Zoom around to different services. It's fantastic. You'll see some, like the Church of the Holy Apostles, where CBST used to meet, is a high, in terms of liturgy, is a high church Episcopal service. And they start with a reading of the Old Testament, and then they have a reading of the New Testament. And they even take the Old Testament out into the sanctuary to read from it, like we take the Torah out. And then from the pulpit, they read something from the New Testament. So, and often the reading from the Old Testament is one of the readings that foreshadows the coming of Jesus. I love it. I'm telling you, I just love it. I'm not at all offended by it. I love it. But it's a different holy text.
Rabbi, I think I've mentioned that I'm taking a class reading in Latin the book of Mark. And when you read it carefully, you know, there are a lot of Christians who say, well, it's prefigured. But as a Jew reads the New Testament, I am finding things where I'm like, wait a second, you people, the writers of the New Testament had in front of them the Hebrew Bible, and in it they found literary forms and even phrasing that they use. The Abraham sacrificing, or the Abraham prepared to sacrifice Isaac, becomes some of the wording for Jesus being a sacrifice or being replaced with the lamb. And also in the story of Herod and what's her name who danced the dance, Salome, he says to her, and see if this sounds
great
familiar.
opera.
He says to her, what do you want? Even up to half my kingdom, I shall give it to you. Where does that's a direct quote from Esther. That's what Ahasuerus says to Esther. Exactly, even up to half my kingdom, I will give it to you. So although Isaiah is seen as more prophetic, there are glimpses and glitters and quotations of the Hebrew scriptures used all over by the New Testament writers, although generally they're quoting from the Greek instead of from the Hebrew.
Right, generally it's from the Greek. And honestly, there's that preservation of text in Greek, as we said before, and I've mentioned when we were talking about this, helps us to understand the original Hebrew sometimes, because the Greek translators were closer to that Hebrew than we are. So sometimes when we can't understand what a Hebrew word means, looking at the Greek is often what a biblical scholar will do, because it can give us an insight into a more contemporaneous translation of the original Hebrew, if you follow that. I want to say, Harold, following up on that, I don't know if folks remember Elder Hostel, which used to have these wonderful week-long or 5-day courses. I used to teach at Elder Hostel, which I loved. The best students in the world, of course, are older people, right?
Been renamed. I forget what it's been renamed.
I know, it's something else now.
Rhodes Scholar.
Rhodes Scholar, right.
But I once taught a 5-day course, and it was 5.5 hours a day with a Christian colleague, just on the story of the sacrifice of Isaac. And we studied, Harold, what you're talking about. I taught all the Jewish midrashim about the sacrifice of Isaac, and she taught all the Christian understanding of the sacrifice of Isaac. Completely different. I mean, for Christian theologians and Christian exegesis, the study of text, the sacrifice of Isaac is absolutely hands down a foreshadowing of the sacrifice of Jesus. Like there's no question about it for Christians. And it was one of the most fun. So she and I taught for 5 days. We co-taught this course for 5 days, which was so fascinating and a lot of fun. And the class was pretty mixed, Christian and Jewish, older folks. I loved it. Anyway.
Rabbi, I did find, if you want to go over, this is an Episcopal lectionary for next Sunday. So there's an Old Testament verse. Then there is either a Psalm or the Song of Solomon or Zechariah, all of which are Old Testament.
Right.
And then there is the Epistle, which is New Testament, and the Gospel. And here it is. So there's a lot of reading, and the beginning readings are generally readings from what is named the Old Testament here. But it's very much set out. It's a lectionary. It's like our parshiot, what you read.
Exactly. That's what a lectionary, the word lectionary means. I don't know, literally, Harold will tell us, but lectionary.
Reading. Lectio is to read.
So every church has their lectionary, a book that the pastor or minister or priest looks at, which tells them what is the lectionary for that week. As Harold said, just like we have the parshiot, every Christian church especially of the high church traditions, have recommended readings, so that every Episcopal church in the Western Episcopal, in the American Episcopal Church or the Anglican will be reading the same readings, and it's set out.
So they do not sit down and read an entire book of the Torah. No. It's shorter. So here are just verses 11 through 18 of Psalm 45 with the Latin name, which is a good way to find ancient music about this. And do you see the asterisk here? Rabbi, do you know what the asterisk indicates?
No.
The etnachtah. The asterisk in the Episcopal lectionary or the Book of Common Prayer is where the etnachtah breaks up the first part of the verse from the second part of the verse.
So there you go. You see the biblical parallelism is in the way they've printed.
And when it's chanted, that's where they take their breath.
I did not know that. And often in Christian churches, of course, what they sing might be related to the lectionary. So the songs that they put together sometimes are related to what they're reading. Any other comments about this? Dorina, did you have something to say?
Hi.
Go ahead, Dorina. Unmute.
You have to unmute yourself, Dorina.
Okay.
Sorry. I know too little about this and I haven't researched yet.
Dorina, we're having a little trouble reading you.
Yeah, can't
hearing you. Should I read what you put in chat? Would that do it?
Yeah, why don't you do that, Harold?
Dorina says,
okay.
The virgin part is a big deal due to the Christian idea of the original sin that is kind of sexually transmitted from the father to his children. It may seem irreverent as I say it, but if Jesus is the son of a human father, that would mean that he is not free of the original sin. So we're going kind of deeply into Christian or Catholic theology here. And then Doug or Susan, I never know, says the devil can quote scripture for his purpose. And
Say
then
that again, Harold?
The devil can quote scripture for the devil's purpose. So the devil can twist the words of scripture.
Yeah.
Ellen Poster says the divine office.
Jews or Christians, anybody can do it. Yep, Jews do it all the time.
Dorina, can you mute yourself? I'm going to mute you because there's a static that comes through.
Yeah.
Ellen Poster says the divine office chanted by Catholic monastics is the Psalms. And what much of Gregorian chant is Gregorian chant of the Psalms. And then Noreen says, privately, but I don't think she'd mind my sharing this, the beginning of the Common Era was political turmoil. Who was who and what camp were they in?
Exactly.
And that rabbinic Judaism and Christianity both have their roots in this same century in responses to the fall of the temple in the year 70 CE. A lot of thought
Wonderful.
going through this. No hands up now, so we'll throw it back to you, Rabbi, for the last
Yeah, we just have a
6
few
here.
minutes left. So if you have any questions or as we've pointed out, Wikipedia has really wonderful articles, which I've discovered. I never really have explored Wikipedia as much as I have during this class when I need to quickly learn something. And I really encourage people. It's an amazing resource that we have on our computers. And really, if you only understand 20% of something, don't feel overwhelmed. That's good. So you walk out with 20% more than you had of a particular article. And you rereading things is a very Jewish concept. I think somebody has a raised hand now, Harold. I can see.
Let's see. Yes, either Doug or Susan again. Go ahead.
Since this is our last session like this, I just want to ask the question. It seems to me so much of the Psalms is related to complaining about the enemies of David. It's so much is dedicated to his being besieged by enemies over and over again. We hear that. Is that going to continue on the way through the rest of it? And is that important?
Well,
is that significant?
Well, one could argue that they're not the enemies of David in particular. They could be internal enemies or any enemies. You'll see they're not just enemies of David. And I would say it's not a correct reading of the Psalms to say it's all about David. We don't know. We know for sure, even if I take the most extreme position, which is that David wrote some of them, which I personally doubt, for sure, most of them were not written by David. So yes, I would hope we would move to a different place. One of my goals is to get us out of seeing the Psalms as only about complaining, but about finding a place to understand. It's a little bit like saying, is opera all about women screaming all the time? And to get a little deeper than that takes work. I appreciate it. And as an opera lover who didn't grow up loving opera, I know I've had to do that work. And now for me, when I hear a certain aria, which is another aria that you could just describe as a woman screaming, and you hear the pathos and the pain, and you could say, oh my God, it's just another version of somebody complaining about how bad life is, another tragedy. But life is full of suffering is the reality. And I think that great art, like opera and like the Psalms, find different ways to express suffering. And yes, a lot of the Psalms deal with the truth of human suffering. And it is a truth, it's a reality. And I think the Psalms also, as I talked about at the very beginning, there are different categories of Psalms. One category is the lamenting psalm, which is about expressing suffering. And it's reflecting back to us this deeply human reality that we suffer a lot in the world and others have suffered. And how do we express it in a way that is, I believe the Psalms are universal in that way once you hear them. Some of the Psalms are full of thanksgiving and gratitude and expressing praise for what the world we've been given looks like. Some of the Psalms are very historical and tell a story. We haven't gotten up to those yet. They're a little less fun because and some of the Psalms are full of joy and celebration. So there are different kinds of Psalms that exist. A lot are about human suffering. I wouldn't use the word complaining, but I understand why it looks like it's complaining. Because I believe that suffering is a part of the human condition. And that's the reason that for me, the Psalms remain deeply relevant and deeply powerful, and why music that talks about suffering done well, the great music, like much of opera. I remember when my kids were little, and Molly and Liba both are major opera fans now, but I can't remember which opera. It might have been Rigoletto. I don't know. At one point, Molly, who was probably 6 or 7 at the time, threw up her hands and she said, I just can't take it anymore, and stormed out of the room. So I totally appreciate that sometimes it feels like it's just too much. But if you are the one who is suffering, when you read something that deeply reflects the reality of human suffering, it can be very comforting, I think, to read or to hear a beautiful expression of it. That's what I think great art and great religion should do. But I understand the word complaining. I hope by the end of your studying with me, you'll move to a different understanding. But if not, that's totally up to you.
Stephen Raphael had some musings on this.
Oh, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to add that when I read the Psalms, they sound like complaining, but when we've reinterpreted them and written my own, then it sounds like human suffering. Then it feels like human suffering.
So
That there's a
now,
difference between
right?
reading it and writing it.
Well, now when you go back, what I hope you'll achieve, this is my kind of unsaid agenda, so to speak. What I hope we'll achieve is that when you go back now to a psalm that we've worked through together and you've written about and you've heard other people write about, when you read the original, all of that will be there.
Mm.
When I read the original, as I said, I've been reading these psalms since I was 15. I'm now 61, so that's a lot of years. So when I read a psalm, I think about who I was when that psalm popped out at me, or when I've studied the psalms in classes, or when I've studied them by myself. So all of that starts layering it. So when you, Stephen, sit down and read a psalm, you're going to have things popping off in your head that weren't there when you first read it without all of this. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
Well, it's the same as, I work in the movie business, and, there's films that I've seen 20 years ago that I watch now that I have a completely different, relationship with.
yeah.
That's,
And you'll see, you'll start to hear people's voices when you read Psalm 7 now. When you read the original of Psalm 7, it will be changed by your own writing, but also other people's experience of it. And that will carry with you the rest of your life.
Betsy, you put something in chat that I think is worth saying out loud.
Thanks. Good morning. I just wanted to say that already I've gone back to Psalm 1 and 2, and it reads, my whole relationship to just
Great.
reading Psalms is different. I also wanted to say that I'm studying to be a chaplain right now.
Uh-huh.
And part of the chaplaincy program, when we have our class time on Zoom, someone has to do a reflections. And so this past week it was my turn, and I did reflections about the Psalms, and it's all in thanks to you in this class. And I taught a little bit about some of what you're talking about, and I showed 5 different versions of the Psalms, Christian and English. And it was fascinating that Christian Catholic people in the group were not able to understand the distinction between translation and interpretation. Mm-hmm. And I think that has a deeper resonance in terms of how they see scripture. Wow. And even though I talked about it a bit, still the response back was, this is translation. And I even corrected, I said, no, it's actually interpretation. Uh-huh. But all that is in thanks to you and this
wonderful. So happy to hear that.
Yeah.
All right, folks, I'm going to grab another cup of coffee and I will be right back and so we will then, Harold and I will rediscuss when we hit September about whether we'll repeat this group. But for the summer, there's no more 9 a.m. Psalms, and I urge people to take Hebrew if you can. And we'll be back. I'll be back in just a couple of minutes. I want to grab a cup of coffee.
Yes, so while the rabbi's gone, and I probably will be repeating this, a few housekeeping issues for those of you. Oh, I see other people leaving to get their coffee at the same time. Sharon, could I have a coffee with a little bit of milk, please? No sugar. The classes. If you signed up for a class, you should have received an email either late last night or this morning with a link to a page that lists all of the information on how to get into all of the classes. We understand that it was a little short for people to buy the materials that they need. If you go to the first class and you have not yet bought the book, the materials will be shared with you. Registration is still open for this week. If you did not register and you want to sort of do a shopping period and go in and take a look at one of the classes and see if it's the right level and sort of hang out in the back, that is possible. You do not need to register or pay yet. I think. That's the deal with the classes. The class registration is open. Who here registered for a class and did get that email? Let's just see. Okay, I'm seeing some good. So the emails went out and were received. The classes start today. The Machzor. Somehow the link to the page to order the Machzor was compromised, or the website collapsed over the week from the number of people who were ordering Machzorim. So we're looking into it. We're going to be calling the rabbinic assembly to see what's going on and getting back to you. It was the right link. It's just something was wrong on their end. The gates have now closed on Psalm 8. We have, I think, 16 written offerings, including a song and some beautiful artwork. So you are welcome to keep on reinterpreting Psalm 8, but in doing so, please just post it on Facebook. We're not accepting anything else. I'm not sure whether I see, and I will be thanking her again. Annika Cooper did a wonderful job of collecting and putting these things together for us, for which I am very appreciative, and we do have some beautiful things. Are there any housekeeping questions that anybody wants to ask at this point of me? Just raise your hand and I will. Ginny. Unmute yourself, Ginny, if you indeed wanted to ask a question. Ginny Henberg?
Harold, thank you, Harold. I just want to be clear, I apologize, I came in a little late.
No, go ahead.
We're not going to have the 9 a.m. Mondays anymore?
That is correct. This was the last 9 a.m. Monday for now.
And but the 10 a.m. is going to continue?
Class continues, certainly, the class will continue. Rabbi, we'll be doing more of an announcement. The class will continue at 10 o'clock for the foreseeable future. That's the simple answer now.
Okay, thank you.
Ellen Poster.
Thanks, Harold. For the Psalms that we've written,
yes.
I can't remember what you told us. If we want to make a correction or make a change, is that still possible?
Yes. Here is what's happening with the publishing project. And I will be sending out some more information on this. We had a caucus yesterday. I will thank Betsy Immersheim, who is here. She has done a remarkable job, as has Megan Kosey. Megan we have 1 through 5, where our editors, Betsy and Megan, have gone through them with questions or suggested edits. Megan will be taking it from here. You will hear from Megan. She will send you the text with either corrections or edits. At that time, if you wanted to make any further changes to your psalm, you will be able to. And then when they come back to us, we will be putting together a PDF that we will share certainly among the class. So that's where the publishing project stands. And then for 6, 7, 8, and then 9 and 10, which we expect for this month, we will be doing a second round of it, and we will adjust the process based on what happens for the first round. So does that answer your question, Ellen?
It does. Thanks so much.
Michael.
Yes. I got the order for the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur prayer book. I ordered it and I received it.
Great.
My partner Alton wants to know, is that book going to be used in the future, or is it already in the synagogue library? Is it the same book we've been using, or is it just for the Zoom Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur?
Michael, this is an excellent question, and I'll answer that. We don't really know. Because we have 3,500 copies of the Reconstructionist Machzor, which is what we've used in the past, but they're all in a warehouse in New Jersey. And we spent hours trying to figure out, could we get them out of the warehouse and mail them to the whole congregation? And that just seemed like an impossible task for an overstretched staff. And that press is now shut down because of COVID, which is why we didn't ask you all to order from there. But this is a wonderful new, it's not so new, but a wonderful Machzor, and that press is open. So as you saw, if everybody orders on their own and not through the CBST office, you get it in 3 to 5 days, right? Whoever's ordered it, and we just don't have a staff in the office, because guess what? We're all working from home, who could manage to get 3,500 books from a warehouse in New Jersey and then mail them out individually to our whole congregation. And how would we pay for them? And it's just, so this seemed a simpler solution. Worst case scenario, you now own a beautiful Machzor that you'll have for the rest of your lives to study and to be with. We don't yet know what we'll be doing when we come back to our sanctuary in Javits. It should be 2021. But honestly, do any of us know?
So, Rabbi, I think you missed the little housekeeping.
Yeah, sorry.
There was an issue. No. Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, and I got a new cup of coffee, so that's
yes. Do you milk and sugar? How did you take it?
No sugar. I just take a little milk. I like coffee dark, strong coffee with a little milk, no sugar.
Okay. So
whole milk. I don't like the
whole milk. Yeah. The Rabbinic Assembly website crashed this weekend. The order page. either
Probably because of us.
so many of us were doing it. They're like, I don't know what to do. Just take the website down. We know this. We are contacting them. So for anyone who tried to order it over the weekend and emailed me, we know there's a problem. We're trying to get it taken care of. For anyone, I know I had one message right now. For anyone who did not get that email about the classes starting this week, Jesse Katz at the office, I put it in chat, jkatz@cbst.org, is amazing, and he's handling all of it. But the classes do start. There is a page that gives all of the Zoom information, and Jesse is more than happy to send you the link or walk you through it. And Cindy asked, will the discount be extended? Cindy, I don't know. As soon as I hear, I have asked that I be updated. As soon as I am updated, I will update all of you.
Harold, I got an email this morning. So this is hot off of the email press.
Yes.
We have extended the discount for a month.
And Judy Pappenfuss gives us information that the Rabbinical Assembly website is coming back up. So it was just the weekend. So many CBSTers ordered. And you can also order, if you are a traditional egalitarian minyan person, the same discount applies to the Sidur Lev Shalem, which makes a very nice companion to the Machzor Lev Shalem. So how did everyone like Pride? Happy Pride. Happy
weekend,
day
everybody?
after Pride.
We had Friday night. We had the Deborah Begdal's committee connecting and community on Friday at Pride. What did you think of Friday night services, everybody?
Friday night was fantastic.
What was your favorite part? What'd you like?
I had to put the Kleenex aside and get a kitchen towel.
So
I loved the immigrants doing the prayer for our country, and I thought, oh, it works so wonderfully on Zoom that if you had them in the sanctuary, you know, in a line doing it, it wouldn't have had the same effect. It was just so marvelous.
That was fabulous. Yeah.
I never even heard of one of those languages. Kyrgyz, I think. Kyrgyz.
From Kyrgyzstan in the former Soviet Union.
No, but I didn't. Yeah.
Kyrgyz. Yeah.
And the graduates, I love the graduates.
And all, yeah, that was pretty great seeing all those kids.
Made me want to go back to school.
You know, and on
Seeing how
Sunday,
the teenagers were all groaning, like, oh my God, Mom, really? I have to do this? It was so perfect.
Well, and having
So moving.
both Sam and David singing was just an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah.
And you managed to do it so that they were not out of sync. I don't know how you upgraded the stuff, but
A lot of
fantastic.
practice. It's really hard. It's very hard. None of it is easy. And yeah, because one of them has to be recorded all the time.
Simon,
I thought,
sorry. Simon and Sherry have something they'd like to tell us their favorite part of the
This is the big secret about this technology. Only one voice can be live music.
it looks so perfect.
More than one voice, it means we have to record and practice together, and it's really, really hard work.
but the audience doesn't know who's live or which one. We don't know.
I don't want you to know.
I love that.
And
I
it
love that.
changes. And that's not the point. We don't want you to focus on that. This is
Right.
what we have to do in order to create the kind of music we love. The point is you shouldn't notice the technology.
Right. Yeah, right.
Sherry has her hand up.
Yeah, it was the most spectacular Pride service. And part of it was that one-on-one that Saul talked about, that you're so close to everyone who's speaking and singing. And the other part was Masha Gessen.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
She was fantastic.
It was revelatory. You and she together. And afterwards, it was just amazing. You and they together.
So do you say they are or they is?
Okay, so we have a question.
Oh.
Is it they? I'm talking about Masha Gessen. I say they is wonderful. Are wonderful.
I don't think it matters.
It doesn't. But they were the most exceptional mind I think I've ever heard. And she said it, and they said it so I could understand it. It was absolutely phenomenal.
When I call her a public intellectual. You know, there are a lot of people who are thinking important things in the world today, and there are a lot of people and academics who are creating. what Masha's able to do, and partly because they're a journalist and not an academic. Their job is to write stories, not to write academic pieces. Although I think Tim Snyder is also a public intellectual that way. America just doesn't have the tradition of public intellectuals the way that Europe does, and Israel, by the way. And America is very weak because of that. And I think that public intellectualism has had a comeback in this last 3.5 years because there's been such a need to try and understand what's happening in our world. And there are people who need to communicate with the regular people like us. Oh, we're hitting 10 o'clock. Sorry. Okay. Sorry.
Julie here.
And I also just want to say, I just love that we had Masha Gessen and Pete Buttigieg in the same service. What a CBST world. We had a queer trans immigrant from Russia and a cis gay man from South Bend, Indiana. Here we are. Okay.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Happy Pride. And this is an iconic song. Many of you are familiar with it. It came to me for a couple of reasons. One is the Eli, Eli. We've seen different iterations of this. It's the, it happens to be those are the first words of Psalm 22, but we've seen other iterations of it. Adonai, Adonai.
I went and took the laundry out.
Everyone please mute themselves. Everyone other than
Sal,
Julia,
can you have to mute yourself? We're listening to the laundry. Oh, Julia is now muted. Julia is muted.
I am now unmuted. Mute, unmute. Eli, Eli, my God, and so we've seen different versions of this in Psalms so far, including Adonai Elohai and Adonai Adonenu. So this question of who the psalm, within the psalm, who are we addressing? You know, a personal God, a collective God, but then even more so the discussion about our role as a species in our natural environment and in the ecology of the world brought this prayer to my heart. Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat adam, rishru hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat adam. And of course, words written by the amazing poet and fighter Hannah Senish.
Thank you so much, Julia. And I think that this would be a time for everyone to go into chat and tell Julia how much we love her. The people who have given the three musical specialists who have given so generously of their time and their souls for this, and have looked through liturgy and psalms to make sure that every day they have just the right thing that comes from the soul. And Julia, we love you, your beautiful voice, your beautiful spirit, and everything that you have brought to our class. Thank you. Thank you so much with our hands, with our hearts, and with our words.
Thank you, Harold, and thank you to all of you. This has been a blessing for me to be a part of as well.
Thank you so much, Julia. Amazing. It's really been beautiful that we've started and ended every single class with music. And we have to give thanks to Judy Ribnick for coming up with that as an original idea of our original couple of weeks.
Wow.
To make sure we had music.
So today, we have a really big show today. We have offerings, but Rabbi, you wanted to go back to that map for a minute.
I just want to show a map that I showed to the 9 o'clock class that Harold found just to place this particular psalm, but also some of you saw the article in the New Yorker about David, which I strongly encourage people to read. Harold posted it in the Psalms class. But just to look at a map to see David, so this is You see up at the top, it says the United Kingdom of Israel, which only was united for a generation, maybe you could say a generation and a half. And then the kingdom was split in two, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom is called Samaria or Shomron, and the southern kingdom is called Judea or Judah or Yehuda. And that's why in Hebrew, the West Bank is still called Yehuda v'Shomron by the settlers who live there. That is the East Bank, what Harold is circling. That's now Jordan. The West Bank is the West Bank of the river, which goes up north where Tirzah is, and does that Shiloh, you see Shiloh? There, Shiloh, or Silo it's called. That's all the West Bank. Okay, but let's look at, you see the city of Gat? That's the city that some people think this psalm is referring to, the Gittit. The word Gat is the name of a city that was in Philistia, which is where the famous battle between, or in the valley by Gat, is the famous battle of David and Goliath took place. So just to kind of visually, according to biblical the biblical tale, and that is a huge valley that's surrounded by there's a whole other story about Betsy DeVos, but I'm not going to go there today, so we can get into our stuff. But that's a very important one for our day. But now look where Hebron is. Harold, if you could circle Hebron.
Wait, I
down a little
lost
bit.
it for a second. Here's Bethlehem.
South of Bethlehem.
Here it is.
So that's where David then lived, as we know, and where he became a chieftain of some kind. And then he went up to Jerusalem. You see, going through Bethlehem, and there's Jerusalem. And on the southern tip of Jerusalem, he created what we now call the city of David. And it was his son Solomon who built the temple on, it's called Har Moriah, Mount Moriah, on the highest hill, which is now where the Temple Mount is, where the Dome of the Rock and the El Aqsa Mosque are. But that Jerusalem, so you can see, so David, this was the area that David was from, and you can see why this is called this. So David, when the kingdom split, the south was Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Hebron. These were the important cities of the southern kingdom, called the kingdom of Judea or Judah. And the northern kingdom was the 10 tribes of Israel. The southern kingdom were the 2 tribes of Judah. The 10 tribes of Israel disappeared. That's a whole other story. You've probably heard the phrase, the lost 10 tribes. Those 10 tribes were the northern kingdom. And the southern 2 kingdoms were Judah and Benjamin. And they became what we now think of as our ancestors. All right, so that's just a little bit of a map, just so you have, for those of you who know the region, you can kind of see these stories of David and Gat, which is important because of this particular psalm about Gittit, which many think it's related to the town of Gat, but nobody knows, of course, but just so that you see it. All right, Harold, we are now going to...
Oh, yes. Dean Dresser, if you could unmute yourself. And Dean, I would say, outdid herself this week with her artwork. And let me show it. And Dean, if you can tell us what we're seeing.
All right. Hi, welcome. Thank you all. So this is my rendering of Psalm 8. For me, this is really wonderful. You can see to your, we'll go to the circles in a minute, but if you go to the left to the common field of where we live our human lives, all of the matches which are substituting for us, none of them they're all following COVID-19. They all have their mask on. So just pointing that out, they're all separate and keeping distance. So it sets off that this psalm for me was both celebratory and gets into incredible awe, which is really important, I think. And so going then to the psalm and to, I know I have here in my notes. Yeah, so if you now go to the right, if you go to the other detail, the first one is because this has to do, yeah, thank you. The unnameable God. and the manifestations of what we have sometimes have called the heavens. So these, of course, are all in the process of becoming. And so I made them circles because part of that is eternity. That also goes back to carpet pages in the Middle Ages, which Hebrew text is used and also been used in the Islamic traditions. I happen to love, it's true, I do love illuminated manuscript, the Book of Kells. So anyway, there's a tradition around that. This is really beautiful, but I wanted to make them constantly becoming. So you can see the line between what is the sun. It's clearly has a NASA dynamic in it, in that these things are all dynamic. They're all in the process of coming, and it's finished and not finished. I also wanted to stay away from references of the Trinity or any of that kind of stuff. So, you know, I have 4 circles for the top that are also dynamic so that there's more circles coming. But that would have taken me down the path. I didn't have time to do the research on numerology and Judaism, and I know that that would be a whole lifetime. So
Yes, that's a huge topic.
that's a huge topic, but I just wanted you to see that or acknowledge it. Our speaker, I'll just leave it at that, is always the match that is not lost its head. So it's the little green guy. And so he is speaking and he's envisioning himself as larger. So he's stretching. So if we go out, as you saw, there's the shadow of the match around him, which is about 2.5 times his size.
Right.
Yeah. So you can see that he's reaching towards the heavens and that he has this special place of, you know, a little less than the angels. And sometimes they've said divine. There's different interpretations, as you've heard in translations. So the bottom, just want to make this clear. These are Israelis. So this is a blue throat, and they travel. I thought it was beautiful because the throat line has kind of the shield of David. So I thought he'd like to join the Psalms. He's an Israeli. And then of course the fish and the ocean and the waterways is shown. He is also an Israeli. That is, you know, often, you know. So I did some research on that. I resisted and didn't thought anyone needs encouragement with the golden calf. So I stayed away from the golden calf. There's, you know, that's another story. But I thought agriculture and the way that we have dominion over those animals has to do with our gathering of grain. So if you look, there's little, well, you can't see it in this, but in the real piece, this small circle not only has the seeds, but it has the shafts of wheat. And then these are sesame and other sources of grains and earth from Jerusalem. And then the next is the gold circles again are always interlaying dynamically. For the wild beasts, I think it's us. We have now lost 60% of life on the planet. Our capacity for destruction is immense. So if we're going to tame wild beasts, we need to look to each other in our behaviors. So with that, that
Fabulous,
is my
Dean. I love it. I just love the finished, not finished. That sense of this psalm too is so powerful, and I love to see this is the first one where we've seen some realism with the birds and the fish of your pieces that we watched. So that, and this psalm so beautifully has that in it. So I really love that. I cannot wait to see all of these on display together.
Absolutely.
Can you just imagine what that exhibit will be like? Fantastic.
So,
Dean, are they all the same size? That's also we
Yeah, they're all 24 by 36. They're 2 feet high and 3 feet across.
That's pretty big.
So Lori Kropman actually is on her way to the airport and said that if she gets there in time, she'll call in and read hers before she gets on the plane. Lori, are you here? If you're here, unmute yourself. If not, Sherry, you are up first today.
Okay. Wow, Dean. Whew. That's amazing. What you did was just also very moving. So this is in my hands, after Psalm 8.
Go ahead.
My small hands could not create them. Two new sparrows, fluffy, flutter wings, open gullets, expectant. Mama shoves food down. Baby bunny freezes, hasn't yet gleaned the hopping how of escape. My alto voice could not name them. Feed the ducks, rabbits join mourning doves, crows, grackles a squirrel, a chipmunk. My mind's eye could not paint them. Crowned in glossy green, male mallards scoot, poked by plucky red-winged blackbirds. Oyster catcher gulls cross morning blue sky, their orange razor beaks, beeping summer surfite. My deepest breath could not blow the crashing boom of the sea. Dolphins dally close enough to watch. Low tide crabs squeeze into cracks under pier posts, safe for now. Unlike sand sharks, stingrays, dead on the noon shoreline. My human heart could not encompass them. Dusk to dark, stars poke through. Our hope's tapestry, unknowable constellations. Even so, we peer into the vastness and, yes, the smallness too. All under my protection, my guard. How could I not know till now?
Wow, Sherry, talk to us.
Well, Alter talks is a lot about dominion. There's a lot about dominion. And Bernstein is more about, well, our responsibility, we should care. And for me, it was more of this psalm was more of an exploration of my relationship to the creation itself, and how I'm not the creator, I can't be, and also my relationship to what has been created, which and from that, I actually discovered my responsibility, my purpose. And maybe it's a more humble way of looking at it, that, just as a part of creation, we come to this. So that's how I got there.
I love the contrast between your consciousness about who you are, both with the limitations and the possibilities, with this incredible description, which is kind of you use the psalm as a jumping point of the natural world. And that's exactly what the psalmist is trying to do, is to contrast who we are as human beings, what our potential is, and that we do have some kind of power, as Dean described. We have this we for sure know we have this enormous capacity for destruction. But what you're expressing in your psalm is this enormous capacity for observing, for being aware of the beauty. By just being able to describe it gives us, this is what we can be as human beings, with the limitations of what all the descriptions are, which I don't have in front of me. Our ability to see, or our hearts, are all limited. But wow, do you describe in such beauty what the world looks like, what the natural animal world looks like, which is spectacular. Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. There's a sense of wonder.
Yes,
every time.
exactly. Which is
right.
And everybody, the kind of scholars talk about this psalm as a creation psalm, that this is a psalm that is celebrating the creation of the world on some level. And that's absolutely what you get to. Beautiful.
Well, I also have to tell you, it's historical, but when you were ill and we each picked a psalm, I picked Psalm 8 and I said Psalm 8 for all those days. And I have to tell you that in all that time, I never thought of it in this kind of profound way.
Well, that's part of that's part of depth, right? Sometimes you do things by rote and it doesn't have meaning on some level, but the roteness, as Adria has talked about, has its own meaning. You know, for those of you who don't know, I have experienced 2 very serious surgeries in the course of my 29 years at CBST. And each time I've asked people in the congregation to take a psalm and repeat it for the weeks I was in surgery and in recovery. And to the hospital, I took with me lists of every psalm and who was reciting them. And I had it posted up on, you know, one of those little hospital tables next to your bed. So every day I would see, because I would be reciting psalms, and then I would see who was reciting the psalms. So I felt very connected to the energy of the reciter and the psalm itself. So that's really, it's a very meaningful thing to me. Thank you.
Thank
you. So Sherry, I would
some
say
things it doesn't matter if you don't understand them, right? That's part of the routine. Doing something is by rote. What's the word?
By
rote.
By rote.
Rote.
But I loved it. I picked it because it was just beautiful and full of joy.
And now, you know, Harold is really, and now because of Harold, I've gone down this horrible rabbit hole of YouTubes. The amount of Christian spectacular music for this psalm, I had no idea. But that's really a fun way to waste a lot of time, but it's not wasting.
It's not wasted.
It's not
Sherry,
wasted.
Sherry, I would say read the comments, and I will just repeat Marcia's, which was seconded by several people. We feel like we were walking along the shore with you, knowing that you spend time down the shore. So Michael Goldstein is next. Michael, I believe you are unmuted. Let me pull up your psalm and take it away, Maestro.
All right, here we go. A joyful David prayer to our Maestro. All-powerful God, you rule the world and echo high above. You draw inspiration from newborns to confront those who oppose you and to stop evil wrongdoers. Contemplating the universe made by your hands, I ask, why do you include human beings, granting them a measure of respect? You allow humans to control all your creations on earth, all life on land, sea, and in the air. All-powerful God, you rule the world.
Beautiful. Speak to us, and then Michael, talk to us about writing this.
It was very simple for me to rework the language as I saw it in Alter. I checked with the others, and they seemed to confirm what I was doing, but it was just a very simple statement to me. I avoided the listing of the sheep and the lambs and all the rest of it. I just felt that I could sum it up quickly and focus on the fact that we are subservient in a sense, or we're not gods, but God has given us the responsibility to do his work, or to do their work, however you want to say that. But that, you know, I just made it very simple.
So Harold, can I ask you to put that back up on the screen? Because I want to point out a few things that I really loved, and I don't have it memorized. And Michael gives a great model for anybody. There are some people in the class who have not yet done this, and I want to urge people to follow Michael's example. It's really fantastic. If you've never written a poem, if you've never done creative writing, take the psalm and do what Michael has done. Michael is giving you a great model. Take it line by line, whichever translation. Michael starts with Alter, but you could take whatever translation Harold's given you. It's maybe good to start with Alter because that's close to the original or one of the Hebrew, and just say to yourself, okay, if I were to write this sentence that would make sense to me, if I took out the weird language or the things that don't make sense, how would I write each sentence in a way that's powerful to me? I want to urge people in the class who have never thought of themselves as writers or poets. Michael is giving you a fantastic model and example, and I want to thank Michael for that. So what he's done is he's gone line by line, and he is, like many writers of psalm interpretations, he's staying to the architecture of the psalm. The psalm has 10 verses. So Michael is going line by line. He's not trying to reshape the psalm. He's trying to say, how would I say this psalm in a way that's meaningful to me? And when we hear how Michael does that, we learn things. Like this is the sentence I love. You draw inspiration from newborns to confront those who oppose you and to stop evil wrongdoers. How powerful is that? A newborn can teach us what's right and wrong. We have a sense from looking at a newborn what is good in the world, right? You can't look at a newborn and not feel, oh my God, the possibilities are endless. The obligation we have as adults looking at a newborn makes us feel very responsible. And then, and I ask, why do you include human beings, granting them a measure of respect? You allow humans to control all your creations on earth, all life on land, sea, and in the air. And as Michael said, for him, the specificity isn't meaningful. He just liked the summary of it. All powerful God, you rule the world. Beautiful. And I want to urge people who have never written and are in this class thinking they could never write to try it. And you could show it to us or not, but just try it. And Michael, thank you for giving us that example of going line by line and answering the question. If I were to put this in my own words, if it would make sense to me, how would I do that? So I want to really encourage people. Thank you for that, Michael. Thanks.
I have one question that's more general. We talk about the Psalms and the 150 written hundreds and even 1,000 years ago.
More than that, 2,000 or more years ago. Yep.
Is there some way that the Psalms are being added to, or especially now, the GLBTQ point of view on existence? What is happening to update all of this work?
We're doing it.
What we're doing it. We're not changing the original text, so to speak, but what we're doing, that's what Norman Fisher did by publishing his book, or Bernstein is doing by publishing her book, or Alter. Every generation adds to our understanding of the original text. We're doing it right now. We are doing it.
Is anyone writing new Psalms?
We are. That's what we're doing.
And how will they be instituted?
Well,
they won't be the class. So there's a question, and Harold, we need to schedule some of these topics that I've said I'll teach about. They won't be part of the original canon. That canon is closed, but they do become part of the canon of the Jewish people for sure by being out there in the world. But there are many different, believe me, anybody who studies Psalms studies Norman Fisher. Anybody who studies Psalms studies Alter, all these Psalms, but it doesn't mean they become part of the original. So the whole question of canonization, I should do a little teaching about. And but we don't change the original necessarily, although we do when we do prayers, but not the original book, but we keep adding to it. And that's the Jewish way. There are concentric circles that every generation is its own concentric circle.
Thank you.
There are feminists, absolutely. We're doing it right now. What this class is doing, we're doing it.
Judy Hollander is up. Lori Krotman sends a message from the airport that she is masked and she has her face mask on and doesn't want to take them off to read, so she'll be with us tomorrow morning.
Isn't this the modern world, huh? Isn't this the perfect modern world issue? Yeah.
Judy, you are unmuted and with us?
Yes. Okay. Hello, Rabbi. I want to thank you so much for inviting me to your class last week. By the way, this is God speaking. I was so relieved to finally be able to express myself, to get it off my chest. You don't know what it's like to have everyone.
Judy, I'm reading something. We have something up that's different than what you're reading.
I know. Give me a minute.
Okay, fine.
Excuse me. Yeah. I didn't want to say. Okay. So,
go.
So I'm so relieved to finally be able to express myself, to get it off my chest. You don't know what it's like to have everyone complaining and asking you for something or expecting you to be their best friend. Or maybe you do. They don't even make burnt offerings for me anymore. I just want you and everyone here to know that you open the door for me to talk. And like today, even start the conversation. I'm a little anxious about this. Usually I listen, rarely talk. But if you were to ask Maimonides, he would say I never talk. But what does he know? So here goes. Psalm 8, by God, by me. Let the earth be the realization of my dream. In the beginning, I created the heaven and the earth. Just me, I did it. I created earthlings in my image. That means somewhat like me, but not exactly. I let them have dominion over everything, to oppress, to tyrannize, to subjugate, to cultivate, to keep, and to guard. I made them a little lower than the angel and crowned them with glory and honor. Oh, earthlings, I hoped for so much when I breathed life into you. I gave you choices, but instead of cultivating and guarding, you chose oppressing and subjugating. Oh, earthlings, I wring my hands and my heart. Stop destroying what I have created.
Wow.
Learn to guard my creation and yourself. Make the right choice, I pray, earthlings. Make the right choice. Protect the work of my hands so that you may live. Choose life.
Wow.
Let the earth be the realization of my dream, for your own sake, if not for mine.
Wow. Speak to us. And what did and talk about the Langston Hughes comment at the bottom?
You got that? Yeah. Well, I lost my there. He has this poem, "Let America
Be America Again."
Be America. Yeah, of my dream, and it never was. And when I heard that, I thought, fits in here someplace. You know, it was like one of these things. So I had to work it, and I realized it was just something about, like, if God were saying, let this be what I made, what I was imagining it would be.
Wow.
And
That
it's
is
not.
amazing. So that, Judy, is so brilliant, to take the psalm, which is written from the human perspective, and turn it around to be from the creator's perspective, and to talk exactly what so many of you brought up. We had the power and we're screwing it up. It's not that we don't have that power, and it's not that this is the way the creator wanted it. Wow, that is so interesting and very, very Jewish, to kind of be able to put in God's voice the disappointment in God's creation. Beautiful, very powerful. Could you put it back up again, Harold? Just, I want to look at a couple of those lines, passed by a little too quickly. Yeah, and just so, and as I said, many people talk about this as a creation psalm, that it's really very, it echoes the Genesis story. And so for you to do this, let the earth be the realization of my dream. So that's the Langston Hughes reference. Hold it, go back to that first paragraph. Sorry, Harold. Back up. Back to the beginning.
You see it?
No.
Maybe it's not paid. Okay, let me put it back up. Hold on.
Thank you so much.
Rabbi, I had been, we had been, a couple of us here had been looking at Soloveitchik, and he looks at the two creation,
yes,
you know, in Genesis 1 and 2, and looks at the wording, and that was part of the impetus for looking at it this way also.
Ah, that's the Lonely Man. Is that the one you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think has been so exciting for my evolution, is not just looking at the psalm and responding to it, but I realize that I have knowledge and information from other Jewish texts, and it's not deep, but it allows me to pull from other parts of what I already know, and that's new for me.
So Soloveitchik wrote a very important book, which I read every couple of years because it's really important, called The Lonely Man of, what's the full title? I've forgotten the full title.
Or something.
But talks about the creation stories and how God is disappointed in us.
The Lonely Man of Faith.
Lonely, yeah. So in the beginning, I created the heaven of earth, just me. I did it. I created earthlings in my image. That means somewhat like me, but not exactly, which so echoes the psalm. Oh, wow. So I made them a little lower than the angels and crowned them. So it's a beautiful integration of this perspective of coming from above and looking at us, but also reflecting back, taking the psalm language, but putting it in God's first person is very, very interesting. Or I used for so much when I breathed life into you. I gave you choices. Just beautiful, Judy. I love it.
Thank you. I used earthling, you know, Rav Zalman, Schachter Shlomi, in his Psalms for humans, he uses the word earthling. And I thought,
Right, it's good. He uses that because he talks about in other places the word Adam,
Yeah.
which is the word often translated as man, is from the same root as the word Adama, which means
Yeah.
earth. So he argues that instead of calling it man, call it earthling, meaning made from the earth, which gets in the Hebrew word Adam, you hear the word Adama in it, which you don't in English. And so he likes the word earthling because you get the feeling of created from the earth. And also it's not so gendered, right? Which, by the way, some people argue that Adam HaRishon, the first human being, shouldn't be talked about in a gendered way because the creation story has these two different versions where one version is kind of a hermaphrodite or a one-gendered, multi-gendered, which is why some people say Adam HaRishon, the first person, should not be considered a gendered person, and saying man is inaccurate. So that's what Judy's talking about. Fantastic.
So before we come to the next reader, I just wanted to say that Lori Krotman has checked in. Here she is in the airport, ready to
Hi,
get on the
Lori.
plane. That is an amazing picture.
It's an amazing picture for our day. When we publish a book of all these Psalms one day, we're going to have that as one of the illustrations.
And now we
very
have,
much appreciate, Lori, that you're listening even in the airport.
now we have Darina. We know sometimes we have a little problem, but Darina, if you can unmute yourself and speak loudly and slowly, let's hope that your voice can come through.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can't stop having microphone issues, sorry.
That's okay. We can hear you now, Darina.
Okay. A sum without a number. It is not rational to praise the name of God in foreign words when you don't even know what you believe in. It was not rational. But I would read those words on some park bench, first stumble over them, then memorize them, and then the weather got too cold for that. Selah. You called me and I came. I don't know who you are or what you are. It was not rational. My atheist friends got scared. The ones who view religion as a trap and want things to be rational. I could not stay both rational and sane. Selah. My people Israel, I was a stranger and you took me in and kindly gave my homeless grief a home. My friend was one of you, the one to whom I said those ancient words because I didn't know how else to mourn him.
Wow.
In what feels like another lifetime now. Sarah, grief is not rational. Love is not rational. I was reading from my own printed copy this time.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Wow, Darina, please talk to us. This is spectacular.
Oh, this is that grief I mentioned in my message to you, Rabbi, when I sent you that recovery body, the doll. Can you hear me now?
It's hard to understand you. Could you say that again, though?
You froze on my screen for a while, Rabbi. I don't know why.
Okay.
So this is the grief that I mentioned in my message to you when I sent you that package with the recovery body doll. This is what how I discovered Judaism. I started studying Hebrew on a whim and ended up making friends with a Bulgarian Jewish man on Facebook who was very ill. And that friendship lasted only 1 month. That was the last month of his life.
Wow.
And then when he died, I didn't know how to mourn him because I didn't have any customs left. I had broken up with my former church, and we hadn't developed anything secular. And I started searching around Jewish sites, and then I ended up reading the mourner's Kaddish on benches in the park, quietly to myself. And it was completely not rational. Just, I had to find some way to honor him and some way to express my grief in order to stay sane.
Wow, the theme of life being not rational, grief not being rational, love not being rational is so profoundly deep in the Psalms because it's so human. Harold, would you mind putting that back up for a moment?
Nope, hold on a second.
So first of all, I love the sense of a psalm without a number. And to praise the name of God in foreign words when you don't even know what you believe in. You speak for most Jews, by the way, by saying that. And the language of the Kaddish is also foreign to most Jews, certainly. And the use of the word Selah and just the not rational theme, it's just spectacular, Darina. You're an amazing writer in English. I can't imagine what you achieve in your native language. This is really spectacular. Harold, can you scroll down? I could not stay both rational and sane. Selah. That is just an extraordinary sentence. It's just really beautiful. Such a gift to have you in the class, Darina. Thank you so much for that. That's really, really beautiful.
So
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yes, thank you. Darina, and make sure you read all the comments. Andrea is next for our last offering of day, and then we have some announcements, and then we will be sung out, if that is okay.
Yes, and I have a couple of things to say too in the announcement section.
Okay. Andrea.
You ready? Okay. Out of the mouth of babes, innocence, it is then we fully feel your powerful presence. Awareness to awareness, and then back to the comfort of unawareness. Because we mere humans dwell in chaos. We see nothing, we hear, and yet little penetrates. We create, we destroy, we love, we hate. We swim toward you, but never quite reach the end of the pool. As we take each step toward the grave, we dream of climbing back into the womb to return to you before our last breath.
Wow. Would you talk to us, Andrea?
Well, firstly, I mean, a lot of this is my mother passed away 3.5 months ago. Actually, right before they closed the hospital down because of COVID. It was in the middle of that chaos. Yeah. And we were there, thank God. And so, you know, part of what's going on in my mind is, you know, I guess out of the mouth of the babes started it for me in this psalm. The process, we were there for about 10 hours with her, and the process of her passing was just, you know, very interesting. But after several hours, she kind of left us. And then, you know, she was asking for her mother and all that. But then as her father did the same thing, she kind of looked up into the corner of the room. And my sister and I both looked at each other, and we experienced that as her, like, either reaching out to God or connecting with God. So that, you know, I'm trying to process that really is what's going on.
Well, and it's very beautiful how your psalm starts with the, could you put it up again, Harold? You take the, and this is a really fantastic example, and we're so sorry for your loss, Andrea, but so beautiful for you to take that experience related to the psalm and then create something so beautiful in her memory. So that you're taking off from the out of mouths of babes. So that's one phrase that clearly resonates with you. Right. Innocence. It is then we fully feel your powerful presence. And this is, you really feel this deep cycle of life, not a corny one, but the very profound one, going from the total innocence of a baby to the chaos of our human existence, and this overview of everything we do in life, right? This is kind of the arc of our lives. We see nothing. We hear, yet little penetrates. We create, we destroy, we love, we hate. We swim toward you. This is what we all as human beings do, but we never quite reach the end of the pool. And then the cycle. So going from the beginning of your psalm, which is about babies and innocence and complete innocence, we dream of climbing back into the womb and to return to you before our last breath. So beautiful. The arc of this is just so moving. What a summary, huh? What a summary of our lifetimes. Well, may your memory, mother's memory, be for a blessing. That's a gorgeous.
Thank you.
Right, beautiful.
So a few things
Rabbi,
before we turn it over to Harold and to our music. A couple of
no, I think we're turning it over to you and your announcements right now.
So I hope those of you received a notice that Anne Targovnik's beloved mother died on Shabbat. And I'll be doing the funeral this afternoon. In fact, right after this, I'll get in a car to go to the cemetery. It'll be graveside, and it's just private for the family. But then we'll be doing a Shiva Minyan on Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock. If you didn't get that information, also ask Jesse Katz, and he'll send it to you for the Shiva. And if you didn't get the notice, just contact Jesse. And so I'll be doing the funeral later today. And some of you know I was tortured for the last 6 or 7 or 8 nights in my neighborhood from the fireworks, which have been out of control, starting at around 4 in the afternoon and going till 3 in the morning. And so after Shabbos on Saturday night, Randy and I drove out to East Hampton. So I'm out here, but we'll be teaching the class from here till after July 4th. I couldn't take it anymore. It was almost 8 nights of no sleep. So hopefully I'll get some sleep out here. But I'll be doing classes and everything from here. So just to let everybody know. And we're going to continue now. Harold will tell us Psalm 8, probably for a couple of days. I have invited, by the way, Or Rose's project at Boston Hebrew College is now doing Psalm 8, and it's up on their website. I urge everybody, go to it. I think I posted it in the Psalms class Facebook page, but if not, and they include as part of their Psalm 8 exploration, Norman Fisher's Psalm. And I've invited Rabbi Sharon Cohen Anisfeld, who wrote her own Psalm 8, to one day this week come and read hers and talk to us. So we're not exactly sure which date that will be, but it'll be, but I urge people, there's some music about settings for Psalm 8. And so since you're now becoming deep into Psalm 8, it's wonderful to see how Or Rose's project is doing as they explore Psalm 8. All right, Harold, over to you.
Yes, so Rabbi, I think I speak for the class when we hope that you can take some time for yourself and walk along the beach, perhaps with Sherry's poem in hand, which is so beach oriented, and just enjoy God's creation yourself and get some well-deserved time with nature. The Hebrew classes we can still register for the Hebrew classes. This is a week of going to class, seeing if it's right for you, changing levels. Everyone who registered should have gotten an email last night or this morning from Jesse Katz. If you did not, email him jkatz@cbst.org. There were problems over the weekend because so many people from CBST were ordering the Machzor from the Rabbinic Association that it crashed. I hear that it is either up or in the process of being up. The link is correct and you should be able to order it. And people who did order it said that they are receiving theirs. There will be information going out on the publishing project. Megan Kosi will be checking in with each of you who did a Psalm 1 through 5 offering to get your corrections or edits. And we are closed now for Psalm 8, but if you have any other offerings that you'd like to share that were not gotten in time to Annika Cohen, please feel free to post them on the Facebook page. And with that, Julia, would you sing us out?
My pleasure. And I was moved to tears today. So beautiful. Thank you everyone for your offerings. They make my heart happy and full. And just on the note of the last words of Hannah Senish's writing are Tefillat Ha'adam. And we were just talking about, so, you know, the prayer of our hearts is the prayer of the earth. It's one and the same, which I find kind of incredible.
Oh, sorry.
Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of our hearts, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of our hearts.
Thank you so much, Julia. Bye-bye, everybody. See you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Looking forward to it.